Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, Jeff. Today I wanted to have a quick discussion with you. Our quick is like 4 hours.
It certainly is.
So I definitely want to condense that down to impact, value, so the audience understands what you do, our story, and to make this an enjoyable conversation that we would have had at an RSL club anyway.
Ella, Calimera, bring it on.
So Jeff, I just want to give a quick backstory on how we sort of met and like the management story and leadership.
Tell the PG version, okay? Not the X-rated version. All right.
Absolutely the PG. Well, you know, of course, mate. There's not many people that listen to me right now anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So Jeff and I we worked at a mutual company together. I think it was 2008 or 2009.
2008.
2008. Wow. Yeah. Time has flown.
A long time. Long time.
And you started indirectly. You're a manager, but in a different department, so we didn't have a whole lot of discussion. It was just random jokes. But I think where my love for you grew and my respect for you as a human more than anything was when we I don't know why, but you were forced to be my manager in that same department for one client.
A particular project we had to work on. Yeah.
That's right. And no names will be mentioned. So in that campaign, what I found, and I learned a lot from working with you, was the trust that you gave me. The leadership wasn't in a way where you had that total control and you wanted to like dominate the relationship. It was actually the complete opposite. It was like, I'm leaving you with this. And I think true leadership is when you don't want to make the manager or the leader not annoyed with you, but also let them down. You're working. Yeah. It's like you're not even working for the company anymore. You're working for the leadership.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to let you down. And I think that was when I grew. Like I understood. Wow. Like that's what leadership should be. It's not about you go and do A, B, C, and D. It's like this is what I expect. This is the standard. Now reach it. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think, look, at that point, you know, I'm a true believer that, you know, I don't know everything, and, you know, people are in their positions because they know a lot more than you do. And that's it with a lot of organizations, right? Just because you are the leader or just because you're a manager does not mean that you know the most about that particular activity, task, or outcome, right? So in that particular project, you were the expert, right? You were the technician in that project. So for me to come in, even though I was leading the project, for me to come in and tell you what to do is an insult, really, right? It's an insult to you and an insult to me because, you know, I definitely did not have the qualifications that you did. So, you know, it's also understanding the people that you are working with and the types of personalities that you're working with as well. And I think that's really the most important trait of a leader. It's understanding the people that you work with and making sure that you work with them in a style that brings out the best in them. And in your case, brother, it was literally just, you know more than me. You know how to make this project successful. This is the outcome that I need you to bring for this project to be successful. And now I'm just going to get the F out of your way.
Yeah, but I think that showed incredible EQ, and I think that's your big skill is understanding people. So like for me, EQ greater than IQ, man. Like I don't know, that's how I see it.
Me too. I don't have much of an IQ. Yeah, so you know, the EQ is just what I've got to fall back on. So yeah, I agree with you there, brother. I agree with you there.
So what are you doing right now? And do you want to share with everybody sort of where you're at, what you're doing, and a little bit about B2B, social selling?
Yeah, sure. So right now, you know, I thankfully during these trying times, I have a business that's still open. You know, it's and I feel very lucky and blessed to be in that situation where you know our agency is in the social media space, but I guess where we've decided to branch off is moving more towards the business to business side of social media. as opposed to the business to consumer. So, the core difference is, with business to business, you're working with people within the business, but you've got solutions, you've got products, you've got services that is designed to benefit another business or business unit, as opposed to business to consumer, like an iPhone. It's more about servicing an individual, right? So what I love about B2B is it's more about relationships. Business to consumer, it's very much based on marketing, product, marketing, brand, and talking about how those products and brands solve your challenges or help you achieve your goals, right? Whereas with business to business, and especially in the enterprise space where we work with the larger sort of companies, people aren't going to buy your solution with a credit card on the computer, right? It takes multiple relationships. It's a longer sales cycle. You have to build trust. You have to build rapport with people, and therefore the relationships you build are more important when it comes to marketing or selling your solutions in B2B. So what we do is we tend to focus more on individual brand, personal brand, and then marketing that person as a thought leader or subject matter expert, and then connecting that person with key decision makers and influencers within the organizations that they want to influence and work with, and then building that relationship through social media channels like LinkedIn, Twitter, and engaging them, educating them through content. That's where we talk about content marketing, which I know you're very, very passionate about, and something that I'm sure you're gonna bring up on this call.
I'm just trying to hold back the beast, mate. I'm just holding back the beast.
I know. Yeah.
I'm like leaning forward. I can't lean anymore forward.
Slow roll. I always get worried when I mention content around you. You start getting very excited.
Careful.
Which I love. But it's that content piece that comes in, and then it's about moving that relationship offline. I feel there's so much focus on trying to generate leads and trying to generate inquiry and qualify all online. All this digital and only sort of come in right at the very end when they've got budget, when they've got a need and that type of thing. Yeah. But I feel that has its place. Don't get me wrong. That has its place, and it is scalable. But at the end of the day, it misses out that relationship building side of things. There's so much more long term to gain when you build the right relationships with the right type of people. And then also from a competition perspective, there's been research that's been done where there's been studies that show that organizations will 75% of the time go with the person who gave them the most amount of value, who gave them the most amount of insight when it comes to shortlisting or buying your products and services. So, if you just try and play the online game, it becomes at the end of the day, it becomes a cost exercise. What best price or what more can you throw in over your competitors? Yeah. But if you play that relationship game and the trust game, that helps to build more profits in yourself. Not only helps you to outdo your competitors, but also helps you to generate more opportunities and embed yourself in their organizations for the longer term.
Wow. Awesome, man. I mean, for me, understanding what you do. So right now, if a large company X contracts your services, is that primarily on setting up the relationship with the key decision maker? Or are you now also going that extra step now with the whole education of how to create the content on their end as well as your consultation, setting that up? Yeah. Is that what you're?
Both.
Yeah. So the education.
It's been both now, because we sort of evolved. In the early days, 6 years ago when I first started Social Journey, it was just about pretty much making those connections, engaging and then setting up meetings and opportunities offline, right? Getting people to events, face-to-face meetings, calls, things like that.
And to be honest with you, you were actually one of the first B2B social sellers in Australia, right? Like
100%. Yeah, definitely.
I've never heard that term before in the way in which you sell, the way in which you develop that service and that solution, especially with the rise of LinkedIn.
Yeah.
The whole, like with the way like LinkedIn, maybe we can get into that later. The mechanics of LinkedIn is more unique than, or it is unique versus the other social media platforms. So
yeah, 100%. Yeah, we were lucky. We were lucky to get in early, be one of the pioneers in the B2B space, because platforms like LinkedIn traditionally were only seen as recruitment tools, right? Which it definitely is, but around about that 6-year mark, these platforms were starting to be seen as not only just a recruitment tool, but a way to engage buyers and decision makers as more and more senior executives started to join LinkedIn and sort of become more active. So yeah, we're very lucky to be one of the first and to pioneer that space. And now, there are a lot of players across the region and globally now that do B2B. So, I'm quite thankful and feel very blessed that, we got in early. We've got a good market position, but also have been able to influence other marketers to invest and offer services specifically around that B2B space and B2B sectors.
Well, I mean, even for someone like myself, I'm big on content marketing, but even sort of putting it in the context in which your company does, because obviously, like I'll talk about a segment on, how to build a successful social media strategy. But I remember when I first discussed this with you, you actually giving advice on even how to create my profile, how to set it up to sort of gear towards the market that I was. Like, I'm only thinking it as from a point of view of just the content that I'm delivering, but you can come in and actually make sure that that's geared at the right people in the right context. Because I think LinkedIn is so much different than yesterday I was talking to someone that sells cakes and cookies online, Jeff, and I was speaking with them for an hour, but I was really, they were like, oh, I got $500 with SEO. And I just said, look, don't worry about doing SEO. Forget SEO for $500 right now, right? What do you love to do? I just want to make cakes and cookies and I want to build that brand. I said, we'll just make the cookies, make the cakes, film it, condense it down, learn about iMovie, post them on YouTube, showcase how awesome you are. But LinkedIn's a little bit different than that. And I think that's where I think for people like me, the whole branding, it's not just me branding Amiga Digital, but it's also branding Andrew Glinsos. And I think that personal brand does overlap. Like, you can't get away from it. And I think, I mean, do you have any much to say? Because I think that there is a lot of overlap. I think on LinkedIn, I find personal brands are probably bigger than commercial, than the actual, I don't know. That's how I see it. Is that right?
Wrong? Well, first thing, this client of yours that makes the cookies, if they're the Greek style that your Yaya makes with the suspicious white powder on top of them.
No one makes it like Yaya, man. Forget about it.
No one makes it like Yaya. Oh my God. I'm well overdue for one of those cookies, let me tell you.
She won't even tell me the recipe, so I can't even trademark it and sell it myself, mate. Like, that's,
she's smart, yeah. That's a trade secret.
Those cornibieres, mate, they're going down in history, mate, as probably the best cookie I've ever eaten in my life. But
that's where what you said is 100% right. That Amiga Digital is you. But this is where I see there's a big gap. There's so much focus and people just wanting to promote their company, right? But it's built on personality. It's built on people, right? So it only makes sense that you do put a bit of effort into putting yourself out there, right? And then when you've got that combination of strong personal brand, like for yourself, right? You in your business, your customers choose you and stay with you a long time. Not because Amiga Digital is great. It's a great brand or a great company.
It doesn't have much to do with it.
It's you.
Mm.
It's you, because they love your passion. So, and I know things don't go. I mean, we talk about our successes and challenges in business, and things don't go according to plan every single time, but they stay because they know you care. They know you're passionate about what you do, right? And they know your work ethic. So that's what I mean. When you can combine that people brand or that personality with a strong company brand, you know, that's when you've got the ideal mix. So that's where I'm coming from. It's you can't ignore the company brand side of things. That's not what I'm saying. That is very important, and you need to get your products and services out there. But I'm just saying, what I'm seeing in the marketplace is too much goes there and not enough in personal brand. So just you know, for people to consider that.
But Coca-Cola, in terms of them selling more Coke, right, to bigger retailers, right, is going to be a different strategy than a service-based business as well, right? So for me, what I find is, even when let's say you work with a client over 7 to 8 years, which I've done, I'll be lying if I said it was all the honeymoon, right? Where everything was like, you see the perfect graph, you know, going like 0 then to 50,000, right? It doesn't always work out like that. The graph doesn't always look like that. It looks like this. And then, right? Yes. And so after, I think when you are faced with challenges, especially in competitive industries like jewelry, when things aren't going well for you, the clients they will stay with you. They will bear the bad times with you if they truly trust you and believe in you, that one, you will get results going forward, but you have their best interest at heart. And I think that whole, the relationship side of SEO, I don't think it's talked about a whole lot. It is talked about in snippets, but I think the relationship, I've seen campaigns dollar value do pretty well, but I still get calls from, even sometimes from clients, potential clients, saying the results with this other company, they're actually not too bad, but I have no relationship with them.
Yeah.
I don't even know what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you. And you know, that's the thing, right? It's, people just think, oh, if, you know, we offer the best product or we've got the most amount of features, that's what's going to make us the leader in business. But it's and it might be in some cases, don't get me wrong, but in my experience, it's the relationships that you build that will get you through the tough times, or get you through when things don't go according to plan.
Absolutely. And going back to when we were talking at the start with our original, how a relationship started, that client literally turned around on the relationship, Jeff, not on the results.
100%, yeah.
The results take time. So up until that point, okay, there wasn't a whole lot of SEO results happening before I took it over, but we turned it around, on both of us, on the relationship.
100%.
That's what turned that campaign around.
And not just that one either. Not just that one either, brother. Like, think about all the other projects and even the biggest client we had. You know, at that agency that we worked together at, a lot of that was relationship based.
Absolutely. But with that particular client, we were there from the start, so we could really, but what I'm talking about with that other client, it was literally what turned it was you dealing with the client and then going, all right, now being on the phone with him for over an hour and just answering question after question after question. And, you know, I think that you cannot underestimate the power of relationships. And
you cannot.
And the clients will stay with you longer, even in the challenging times. Because, man, it's ridiculous for me to stand up and say you work with a client for 10 years or 7 years or 8 years and think you're not going to go through some bad times.
Yeah.
Right? So
think about it, right? Product and services, easy to replace, generally speaking. But relationships and trust, that's something that, you know, takes a long time. So for someone to replace a product and service, it can be done pretty easily. But for someone to replace a strong relationship, that is something that is not as easy to do, right? It's sort of like my relationship with my barber, right? You know, he doesn't cut my hair perfect every time, but you know, I've got a great relationship with the guy. You know,
this time he did, man. This time he cut it beautifully. Dang, man, my dog at. Oh, no, he's on your head.
But and there's that trust there. Like sometimes, I because he's cash only. Sometimes I forget to bring the cash, and he's like, "Hey, just pay me." There's that type of stuff that keeps me going there. Even though I know I could probably get, technically a better haircut or a better looking hairdresser somewhere else. You know what I mean?
But with the other client too, man, I think one of the key things was I had to throw out the package out the window, right? In terms of how much time I needed to spend. I think sometimes you have to sort of throw out the norm to save the relationship. And I think what you're saying is just because, I think that's how we restored faith in that client through Q&As, through just spending time with him, feeling like Andrew and Jeff really want to see me turn this around.
Yep. And they care. Yep. And they've got the skills. They've got the skills. They've got the experience.
So what was some strategy? Like for me, man, I don't know. Like if someone says if someone's asked me today, what would be my best strategies for customer services? And I think that's been my strength in the business as opposed to the acquisition side, where I haven't done really well. I'm open about it, and I'm happy to talk about it. It doesn't bother me. Keeping the relationship is what kept me in business, literally. Right? The result of that with SEO, it takes time. So as opposed to like 2010, if you did SEO 2010, it was clients sort of understood it took time, but they didn't know whether is that just a sales ploy so I can keep paying you for a lot longer. Like now they understand it, but that poses a new challenge now where clients are like, "Hey Andrew, I know SEO is going to take time, and I need to, right." So that relationship has to start right from the very first moment.
Yes, 100%.
If they ask me things like, "What do I need to like?" If someone asks me, like another agency says, "Well, what do you do in terms of your customer service?" Well, I can say things like, every time they send an email, I'll get back to them, like literally within like an hour, right? As long as it's not between the times of like 9 and when I'm sleeping. But if I'm awake, I'm going to answer that email, even if it's I'll get back to you very soon.
Yeah,
I'm obsessed with that, getting back to them like quickly. But there's a few things like that, and then there's I'll text message you, I'll follow up with the calls. I'll do everything to show that I care. I'll go above and beyond. But when people say go above and beyond, they're very loose terms.
Yeah.
So what would be your strategies in terms of building? I know I'll put you on the spot here. I didn't even give you these questions for you to even think about here, Jeff. So I know you're going to do well with this anyway. But what would be some of the strategies that I can do to sort of like, I like to think that I'm doing some of them, but me and other people, what can we do to sort of make sure that we can instill that relationship from the get-go?
I think you're already doing it. And this is one of the reasons why I have no hesitation recommending people to you. Because it's one thing to be good mates, but it's another thing to know, and recommend people that know and trust me to you, right? And one of the things, I was just going to say, one of the things that impresses me about you is that you'll have no hesitation qualifying out. If you don't feel that you can help them meet their goals and objectives, or if you don't feel that you are the right fit for them, or you don't feel that a good relationship will form, you will actually, turn away from that business and say I'm not, I can't help you, which I think is a really important trait and something that goes a long way in terms of relationships. Because you think about it, most people will chase the buck. And most people will say and do things that the client wants to hear, even though they know in the back of their mind they're not going to be able to fulfill it, or in the back of the mind they know that it's going to be a nightmare client or whatever it may be, but they go ahead anyway. And then what happens in the long term is things inevitably will blow up or not work out. Right. And then the relationship soils. And then the thing when that happens is, there's that classic saying, right? If someone is happy with your service, they'll tell 5 people. But if someone is unhappy with your service, they'll tell 100 people, right? So this is where where if you don't do what you do, in the long run, it can really negatively impact your business. So that's one thing I think you do incredibly well, and something that I think builds a lot of confidence in people as well. And I'm sure, like, I don't know, but I'm sure you've had people where you've gone, whatever, no, I can't help you, and they've gone shopped elsewhere where people have just told them what they want to hear, and they end up coming back going, I want to go with you because you were straight with me.
Well, with that cakes business, the call yesterday was the classic. Literally after 1 minute, I just said, look, I can't help you in terms of actually delivering a service to you, but I'm going to give you some advice, and I want to see you grow the business to the point where you can afford my services. So, because I'm interested in building the relationship. So that was easy in one sense, because obviously there was a budget restriction, and then they're a startup and they're trying to tackle a relatively competitive industry. But Jeff, like I told them straight up, like, I can't help you, but I still went on the phone for an hour just because I want to see, I like their business. I like them as people. And I'm like, I know I can't work with you right now, but you are definitely someone that I can build an extremely good relationship with. But I don't think, like, sometimes I walk into meetings and it's got a bit further down the pipeline, and I've gone, I've spent about 10 hours. And now I'm realizing, and that's my sales ability sometimes to I'm not a salesperson, I'm a marketer, right? I tell stories for a living, right? So for me, I went, okay, I can't work with you. So what do I do at this point? So that's when I have to have sometimes conversations, because you think, okay, I like them as a relationship, I like their business, but sometimes the goals and objectives don't align with their budget. So straight away, I've got to be like, look, and they want to work with me, they're ready to sign. And then I'm like, I've got to pull back here, guys, because unless we modify the goals and objectives, even if I do think I can get results for them, that first 12 months of any SEO relationship is critical.
Yep.
So people say
100%.
So people say SEO is a long-term strategy, and it is, but that's not an excuse for not bringing short-term value. That short-term value has to see some spike in traffic or brand awareness or impressions or eyeballs. In 12 months, they should be seeing, like I would tell them, look, clients that have been with me for 7 years, they will see a better return on investment at the 7-year mark. In fact, sometimes too good of an ROI. But the first 12 months, there wasn't a whole lot, but there still needs to be value. So I know in that first 12 months, that relationship to keep the client for the next 10, that it's very critical in that early stages. So if I miscalculate their goals and objectives and the budget, that's not only would they tell 100 people. In one case, there's a few law firms that will tell thousands of people.
Yeah. That's it. That's it. You're doing exactly what my advice would be, and that my advice would be, learn how to say no to the wrong clients for the sake of the relationship, rather than just trying to earn a quick buck, right? Which is what I really admire about your approach to business. The fact that you have that exclusive policy, even, right? Only working with one type of client in a particular industry. It just goes to show your level of dedication it's just things like that, right? It just goes to show your level of commitment and dedication to a client who puts that trust in you and is willing to build that relationship with you because you respect it, as opposed to just going, I'll sign you on. I know it's not going to work, or I know I'm not going to hit those goals, but I'll make a quick buck on the side type of thing.
But when I started the business 8 years ago, I did that exclusivity. Actually, it was more towards 13 and 14. But when I started the business, I definitely had the exclusivity in my mind. I was at the time, don't forget, I was showing my youth here, but I was only like 23 when I started, and I wanted to focus on exclusivity because you can only get one client first. But because I'm also big on philosophy and the philosophy of marketing, and also I wanted to then I started getting, I call myself the romantic marketer, right? So that there you
go. There's your brand. There's your brand.
I'm the romantic marketer that tells interesting stories for brands, right? That's literally what I do. But what I wanted, where that sort of exclusivity evolved was, again, in that romantic marketing, that it's not just only getting a client first for engagement rings, Mr. Young Andrew, but it's going to have to evolve and develop much more deeper in a sense that now clients feel as though, especially with the jeweler that I used to work with before for a decade, that was what he was big on as part of the whole service delivery, was the fact that I was really exclusive to him with no contracts, which meant I had to deliver on the business front. But there's that bit more intimacy in the sense that I want to build you. I really like. I used to joke with clients, particularly once I was talking on the phone, if there's any way that I can show my dedication to your success, other than exclusivity, no contracts, small client base, please tell me what that is and I'll add it, because I can't think for the life of me what else to add. Right? But I need to make sure I can bring value, and I need to make sure I can keep this relationship. And I think, like you were saying too, but I think that whole romantic marketer kicked in. It's like, it's not just even ranking first for that keyword. It's, I want to make you, and I think where your B2B social selling and thought leadership comes in is, I want to make you the biggest in your industry. I want to, not necessarily SEO is only going to do that one way, but be there in the whole content marketing side of things. And I need to fall in love with your brand as a marketer. That's another big thing in terms of the whole, do I bring on a client? Do I literally feel, can I buy into what you do?
100%.
I think there's a conflict of interest when the marketing team doesn't buy into them, but that's a different discussion. But
well, just that term that you said, romantic marketer, romance. It's relations. It's a relationship, right? Yeah. So it's you definitely get it. It's something that is the DNA of your business, and that's what I'm trying to convey to other business owners, especially during these tough times. When we get over this COVID situation, it's the businesses that have the strongest relationships with their customers that are going to bounce back the fastest.
And what do you think would be some ways in which what would be your strategies in terms of strengthening relationships, and what could other people do that are listening to perhaps strengthen their relationships with their clients? What would you, I mean, it's a very sort of, because you got to understand the business and that, but what are some generic things that they could do that could apply to most businesses to strengthen relationships?
Yeah, I think, look, just keep in touch with them. Like how many businesses do you know? And I mean, really keep in touch with them. Like you sign up to a product service, and all you hear from them is when you have to pay them your bill, right? They don't send you anything that educates you. They don't look at ways to add value on top of the service. It's all sort of focused around how to get more money out of you, right? So my thing is, every business is different. Every type of customer is different. But the biggest thing for me is just keeping in touch. Checking in on clients. If there's something that you come across in the marketplace that you go, wow, this is really interesting, share it with your client base. If you're in a service type industry, maybe give your clients, a particular type of service just for being a customer of yours, as opposed to just those, buy 10 coffees and get one free type of scenario.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Something that's a bit more, unexpected. Something that's a bit more random. But I mean, to summarize it, just keep in touch with them, because that shows them that you care, and you're not just in it for the money, and you're not just treating them as a piggy bank.
Awesome. Let's move into to my favorite and final sort of topic, content marketing, right? So
yes,
I've already sort of touched on the romantic marketer, but I believe, for me, I tell my clients that the biggest and the best thing that every piece of content you create and deliver is to build brand. And you build brand through content that speaks to the market. And so what I find is I see a lot of, like, even on social media with B2Cs, right, with the e-commerce space, right, it's a lot of just buy. There's no romance. It's trying to marry on the first date. And my wife,
yes,
no chance I was marrying her on the first date. That was a lot of relationships.
Just too smart for that. Yeah, it's too smart for that.
There was a lot of Q&A. There was a lot of relationship building, my man. That was definitely not an easy sale, that one. But in the sense, she's a wonderful wife. So I tried to, again, I'm going back because it's a recent discussion. Even with the painter I had with Howard on a previous podcast back in 2017, I gave him the idea of just go to every single job and record it. That's all you do, and talk about what you do. Show the world how awesome you are without having to say I'm awesome and buy my product or buy my service. I'm not saying you can't make 1 in every 10 posts, buy this, but just make 90% of posts about what you do, your expertise. I know with SEO, the EAT part of the algorithm, the expertise, authoritativeness and trustworthiness is a new part of the Google search algorithm. So that actually blew up his Instagram. He actually went from like 200. He couldn't get any inquiries. Then when I went to go and sell my apartment, Jeff, he was too busy to paint it. And I thought, geez, after all the advice I gave him, he could have came over and paint my balcony. And I'm sitting there all day painting my balcony. I'm on heat stroke because I'm an office boy, right? And I'm going, bloody hell. I painted my balcony with 3 different shades of white. Anyway, so the point was it blew it up, his Instagram, and that's simple. And he actually developed more ideas, like a virtual beer on Friday with his audience. And the funny thing is, Jeff, he has a lot of painters that follow him. Talk about thought leadership. And right? So they're actually following him now and sort of getting inspired by him and what he does. And they actually called me and asked me, oh, well, what can I do after that? I said, so the whole virtual beer on Friday, and then I actually tested him out on an anonymous account. I said, oh, I don't drink beer, which I don't, right? He goes, oh, that's okay. What do you drink? And I said, kombucha. And he said, okay, we're going to have a virtual beer. We're going to have a virtual beer and kombucha day. And he actually hashtagged the kombucha, and he included me in that post. And when I spoke to him on the podcast, that was like 2 years ago, I said, you just tapped into a very, very powerful marketing zeitgeist, whatever you want to call it, strategy, my man, of inclusion. And I felt like I was a part of your following now because you took my concerns seriously. And not only that, I don't drink beer, so am I included in this? And
yes,
coming from a marketer, I really appreciated that. So yes, I have I don't know what else to say. Like, to me, when people ask me, what should I, there's never, because a lot of businesses will call and be like, I don't know what to do. And it's just show your expertise and build your brand. I would rather content depth and which this is what, hopefully this is, very little production value. It's not fluffy. There's not going to be things popping up. There's not going to be a whole lot of Adobe Premiere with this one, right? But hopefully the depth of the content as opposed to the length of the content. And
yeah. I mean, for me, I'll put a different spin on it because, I feel you know way more about content than I do, in terms of how important it is across all different forms of marketing. For me, the thing that I learned about content is the psychological value, and let me go into that a bit more. So, aside from let's put aside the type of content and the depth for it a little bit, and just look at the psychology of how our brains work and perceive messaging. There's something called the mere exposure effect. It's MERE exposure effect. It's also known as the familiarity principle. And it's a psychological phenomenon that says we are hardwired to become familiar, right? So familiar meaning we start to like things that we become familiar with. Yeah. So for example, this is part of the reason why brands like Coca-Cola, you mentioned earlier, McDonald's, they make record profits. They don't need to advertise. They got a good market share. But why do they do it? It's because they want this mere exposure effect to take place. By always seeing their brands, we just become familiar with them. And when someone says, name a restaurant that sells hamburgers, our first answer would be McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
So talking about the psychology of things. Now, think about something like LinkedIn as a platform, and when you post content on LinkedIn, or even Facebook or Instagram, what do people see in their newsfeed? They see your face, right? Let's talk specifically about LinkedIn here because that's my specialty.
Yeah, sure.
they see your face, they see your name, they see things like your job title, or if you've put some keywords in your tagline, you know, they see terminology around your subject matter expertise, right? Now, if we use the mere exposure effect principle, if I'm posting content on a regular basis, right, you're seeing me in your newsfeed on a regular basis. You don't know me from a bar of soap, but you then become familiar with my face because you're seeing it. You become familiar with my name because you see it, and you become familiar with my company or the type of areas that I'm a subject matter expert in because of what I put in my tagline, right? So this is something that I feel a lot of content marketers miss out on, is the psychological value and the positioning that you can get with content if it's done regularly and consistently. You know, I know you, Andrew. One of the things that is hardest for businesses to do is to create content or post content consistently, right? And this is the reason why content has to be posted consistently, to create that familiarity, to create that near exposure effect. Now, there's another psychological phenomenon called the halo effect. Okay, so we're becoming familiar, but there's something called the halo effect, which is where people start to see you as an expert or a thought leader in a particular topic, right? So this is where the depth and the type of content that you post with it starts to position you as a thought leader or subject matter expert, right? So these are the two psychological phenomenon when it comes to content and why it's so important. One, from a branding perspective, it allows you to become familiar with your audience, and as you become familiar, people start to like you. They're hardwired, right? They just go, oh, so what happens is, you know, whenever I'm with my connections on LinkedIn, whenever I reach out to them for a meeting, I've never met them, or I've never spoken to them before in my life, but they're always excited to speak with me, or they're happy to meet with me because they've seen me, they've become familiar with me on LinkedIn. So they feel that they know me already, right? It's not a cold call anymore, right? It's more of a warm approach, right? And then the content that I post, and this is what I was telling you about earlier, the content that I post is very focused. It's all around B2B marketing. It's all around B2B social selling. It's all around B2B social. It's all around B2B relationships. So the halo effect, people just go, damn, this Jeff guy, like, he knows his shit when it comes to B2B marketing, right? He knows his stuff when it comes to B2B social. They haven't spoken to me. They haven't met me before. But these two psychological phenomenons with my content strategy is what cements my authority in this space. Yeah. Now compare me to someone else could be in the marketplace that knows a lot more about me than B2B marketing, right? But the fact is, if they don't do content, I'm always going to be more liked, and I'm always going to be perceived as the thought leader in my space. I don't have to be the smartest. I don't have to be the best, right?
That's the money minute, man.
Correct.
That's just the money minute. You nailed it. Sorry, go on. I get too excited. I'm holding back the beast.
Yeah, 100%. So, you know, that's what I mean. Like, for me, why I love content marketing is those psychological triggers. Yeah, and that's why it's important. People, why do I have to do content like so frequently, or why can't it be sales related content, right? Because if you don't do it consistently, they're not going to know who you are. And you try and approach them to build a relationship. It's going to take you a lot longer, and it's going to be a lot harder, right?
And
the second thing is,
sorry, no, go on. What's the no, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, and the second thing is, if you're just going out there and trying to sell, what halo effect does that create? That creates you as just being some busted ass salesperson trying to scam $1 out of them.
And then
but if your content is value added,
and then you get desensitized to that person when they do. It's like the boy who cried wolf.
Correct.
Right? So
but when you can add value, and it's something different, and it's a fresh approach, like Howard you're talking about, changes the game, right? And he's not trying to sell anything. No. You know, he's not using his brand to say he's the best or whatever. No, like, he's giving people an insight into how he approaches work, and he's adding value. Like you said, he's adding value. He's educating other painters.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. And see that now, if someone sees that, then how much more confident are they going to be going with Howard than, let's say, one of his competitors that doesn't have the same type of presence on digital, right? And let's face it, this day and age, everyone does their homework on digital, right? I don't care if it's a painter you're looking for. I don't care if it's a travel agent. I don't care if it's an online marketing service. People do their homework, and they don't need salespeople anymore. They can educate themselves online, right? And that's why you've got to make sure you create those psychological triggers as best you can to the audience that you're wanting to attract.
Now you're doing B2B social selling, and you got the word selling in it, and you just talked a lot about marketing, which I think is absolutely, it's not ironic at all, because that's how you sell now. But when I tell clients about saying, am I wrong? Look, social media marketing, it's the word marketing and sales are totally different components and ideas, right? So I know you do social B2B social selling, but when I explain this especially for the B2Cs, right? Because that's most of my calls. It's marketing. I give them the analogy of Steve Jobs, which I think is probably one of the best marketers that ever existed.
Oh yeah.
Right. He can get people to buy the same product every year. and the way in which he did that is he didn't talk about the A13 chip. He didn't talk about the amount of memory that's in this phone. He talked about the experiences you're going to have with it, the possibilities.
Correct.
It was a romance marketer, in my opinion.
Yeah. He knew the value of relationships.
Oh yeah, and it went so far beyond to actually building this massive cult following where it just exploded, and it was done in a way where it's like, this is the experience, this is what's possible with this product. But he'd done it through storytelling, and I think that's the power. And I think every brand's got to become a little bit more romantic about how they help their customers, rather than just only being fixated on just selling to them and speaking at them, but actually speak with them. And I think that's
100%. Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a great, you've probably seen it as well. There's a great YouTube video, and people, if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to see it, by Simon Sinek, that talks about the golden circle, right? And he talks about how traditional marketing, we tend to sell the what and the how, and then the why last. So it's like phone. What is it? It's a mobile. How does it work? It makes call. Why do you need it? Because it keeps you in touch with your loved ones. Whereas he talks about Apple, you make a great example. They start from the inside out. They start with the why. They sell with the why first. Why do you need an Apple? It's because of the possibilities. It keeps in touch with your loved ones. That emotional piece. And then it's how does it do that? Oh, it does that through apps and this and this. And then what does it do? You can make calls. So just by flipping the script, like you said, selling with your why first, like Apple does. That's what brings that cult and people to create a more of an emotional relationship with your brand and with your product.
And that just comes back to the whole content depth thing that I mentioned too, right? How much deeper is it, rather than talking about the specs of a camera, but you'll notice even in the ads that they put up on TV, it's all about what they're filming. They show like that subliminal message, and then they show you the family, and then when you go out to the parks, and when you're walking your dog, and all these sorts of things, taking photos and selfies, and people fall in love with that more than the fact that this got 100 times zoom on my phone.
100%. Yeah. I mean, look at car ads these days, like luxury car ads these days. They don't even. It's all about emotion and possibility, and you don't even know what the car does.
But see, like you said about the golden circle, you don't need to. You know what a car does. But I need to know. I need to know now the difference between this car and another car. I know what they do. I need to know the why. Why am I buying this over another car?
Exactly.
Because the golden circle is going back on the benefits. Now we're talking about the story and the backstory, and I think everybody loves it. And I think with your content, I think with the way in which brands approach content marketing, from my perspective, it's just I mean, it depends what they. I mean, it depends. If I had to deal with Coca-Cola or McDonald's that you brought up, it's going to be a little bit different. But when you're a painter or a lawyer or a doctor or a dentist, I mean, when people come to me, Jeff, and they say, I don't know what content to create, and I'm going to leave you with the last and final say. When people come to me and say, I don't know what content to create, I said, if Channel 10 called you up and said, I want a channel, I want some content from you. I don't want the ad in between your content, right? I don't want the ads in between when people look at their phone. I want the value. I want the real content, right? And then when I said it to my jeweler, I'm like, Channel 10 called you up and said, we're going to put you on the first episode of, we're going to call it Jewelry TV, and you're going to have the first episode. Are you going to question what content you're going to create? Or are you just going to see my point?
Yeah.
But if I told them to go on YouTube, it was like what you were saying. Why should I create content? Blah, 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 blah. But if you say, well, let's say you were given a TV channel, would you be asking the same questions?
Yeah, 100%. It's and we come across those challenges as well. It's not just with consumer space or with small businesses. Large businesses with deep pockets even have trouble coming up with content. It's always a tricky thing, and even for me, coming up with unique content is always hard. But again, if my advice to people that have trouble coming up with content, because I know, we say come up with content, we can give them examples, but reality is people that don't work in our space, it's very hard for them to come up conceptually. So one suggestion, or one way even I use content, is I get other people, path of least resistance. Don't need to create it myself. I can find content that someone else has created, but the thing is, I always have to put my thought leadership on that piece of content. That's the crux, right? Just finding content and posting it without putting your thumbprint on it per se, or you're overlaying it with your personality or your own thought leadership, is a waste of time.
Yeah.
But if you can find great content and then repurpose that or republish that content with your flavor sprinkled on top of it, I feel that is also a good strategy. And then what that does is, over time, as you start to see what types of content other people produce, and you put your flavor on top of it, you then start to build up more confidence and go, you know what, I can actually create a post about this, but do it better. Or I disagree with this post, so I'm gonna create some content that contradicts what this content piece is about. So yeah, that'd be my recommendation regarding content. There's no excuse. I don't think there's any excuse in this world for anyone not to be able to produce content, because you don't have to do it from scratch. You can find content. We're in a world that we're overloaded with content at the moment. So don't tell me you can't find content.
And that's my next point. Like, there's so much. I mean, from that perspective, you can take it and give your perspective. Absolutely, that's a completely valid. And I sort of even do that through SEO audits, but I won't get into that. So it's a very noisy world, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're not even speaking, you have no chance. So what I think our next conversation ought to be, Jeff, is how do they get found in a noisy world? I mean, this is a conversation geared towards, are you even creating? You don't have to write content or video. You can even put your thoughts and show your thought leadership on existing content. But this is a final, and then obviously where people can find you and contact you. But it's a noisy world. So,
yes, it is.
Right? And if you're not even talking, your brand is silent. And like you mentioned, which is exactly what my dad found to be true after 18 years, is if you're not marketing, people won't find you. And other people who may not even necessarily be as good as you are going to overtake you because they're noisier in a noisy world.
Yes. How we've been able to do it and achieve success with cutting through the noise is focusing on a specific audience or specific audiences, and it's becoming really niche with who you're wanting to engage, and then creating content that's designed specifically for them, right? So to give you an example, if we're wanting to target, if we're wanting to engage with a big bank, for example, right? And let's say there's all these senior leaders in a bank. There's a CIO, there's a CFO, there's a COO, there's a CEO. Now, what most companies do is go, we want to engage the C-level, and they'll create content for the entire C-level range and then push that out, and it doesn't stick. Because why? Because it's too generic. What matters to the CFO is not going to matter to the CIO, and what matters to the CEO is not going to matter to the COO, right? In many cases. So where I'm coming at is, hey, out of that C-level range, pick one. Okay, we want to hit the CFO. Okay, now let's create content that's designed to address the specific challenges or the specific goals or the specific desires that a CFO in a big bank would have, right? And that's how you get cut through. And if you're talking about social media channels like LinkedIn, it's only connecting with the CFOs of those big banks. Again, people think marketing or digital is all about mass, get as many eyeballs, clicks, impressions, that type of stuff. Yeah. But I'm a believer in almost that has its place. Don't get me wrong, but I'm a believer in reversing that on digital. Let's forget the broad range. Let's focus on quality, right? If we want to engage the CFO, the CIO, the CTO, we need to have a different content strategy for those people, and we should only be connecting with those
and doing the basic things right. Even with that's so powerful. We have to have another chat. We can't get it all done.
Yeah.
but I say to clients, I say to like people that call me up, that and I just tell them, look, once you do that strategy, people do comment on your stuff. Are you writing back? Like, are you they're not writing comment and you're not getting back to them, doing the basic things right? Are you doing that before you start thinking about going from 200 to 20,000? Those 200 people, are you even writing back to every comment they have?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
And showing that you care. Jeff, powerful. We better cut it. I mean, where can people find you? And then let's set up part two.
Well, hey, people can find me on LinkedIn. That's my jam. That's where I live. So just search Jeff Yang, JEFFYANG, and my company name is SocialGen, 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 and you'll find me. So please connect. I'm always happy to share insights and add value to my network and create strong relationships. So yeah, please find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you for joining me.